Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY!
43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard and welcome into Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Fast Friday, as the boys will be turning some quick laps up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in just a little bit, and hope everything goes well. But the big hope is for Sunday that the weather holds out. So we'll get to all that and talk about plenty more on the program today. Tyler Smith from the Hoosier.com, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, Rob Cassidy from Rivals, the national recruiting director for basketball, will talk to us as well. And we will hear from longtime voice of NASCAR and IndyCar, Alan Bestwick. Looking forward to an interview with him as well. Tyler Smith joins us now. And Tyler, a light weekend and finally in AAU action, but there's plenty of other things going on. But right now, AAU is they finally get a weekend off, which has not happened in quite some time.
Yeah, Indy Elite gets the weekend off. They actually get a little rest time here before the 3 SSB championships in South Carolina in July. So they get some time here to rest and practice a little bit later on. Nike EYBL has another session this weekend, I believe, in Kansas City. So we'll follow that. They were in Indianapolis last weekend. It was incredible to see over 50 Division I college coaches on campus, on site. Had a chance to talk to Jalen Harrelson and some other guys, and just a ton of talent in the EYBL. So they will be playing in Kansas City, but Indy Elite is off for a little bit of time here.
And I guess the first thing I need to hit on is Braylon Mullins. I've talked about how his recruitment is just going to blow up, and it has blown up. I can't open up my phone and Twitter without seeing another offer that has come in for Braylon. I know that yesterday I saw 2, one from Ohio State. The other, I think, was Creighton, I believe. So he is just getting a laundry list of offers that have come in. North Carolina, he is just, and Rob, we'll talk to Rob Cassidy later about him specifically, but he's going to take a big jump in his rankings. Right now he's ranked in around 80 something, 88 maybe, but he will cut that in half likely.
Yeah, and we've talked on the show about how we've both kind of thought he was underrated, and as we've seen him play all summer, that just kind of verifies that. He can do so many things. Step back threes, dunks in the lane. I mean, he doesn't back down from any challenge. So he's one of those risers that you see in AAU season. That's why it's so important, especially because they're playing with such good competition, playing with good teammates. And it's just it's a great opportunity for some kids to show off their skills, even more so in the spring and summer. And actually, there's another guy who's been rising, who Indiana gave an offer to yesterday, Chris Senack Jr., who is now in the top 50 and continuing to rise. He's a 4-star center 2025 class. So another one of those guys that just keeps rising up the ranks. But for sure, Braylon Mullins is one of those that we'll keep an eye on. He's going to have just a ridiculous number of offers when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and that's actually a kid, though, that I think Indiana, they just have to land him. Not from I guess there's no have to anymore, but you would sure like to see the state school, if you're an Indiana fan, land one of the most coveted prizes in the state, especially when you've been on him so long, and even though others are coming at him, you want to get to a point to where you can withstand that kind of outside pressure. But it's going to be a recruiting battle without question.
Yeah, for some kids, it's helpful if you have kind of been there from the start. Other kids, there's certain places they want to go, and if they get offers late and it's an intriguing school, then by all means they could end up there as well. But Indiana's been on that trail and has really put in a lot of work. So if somebody like that does go somewhere else, it hurts a little bit more when you've spent all that time and you've really zeroed in on somebody. For Indiana, they got a ton of guys. If you go to the Hoosier.com, click on BB Recruiting, there's a drop-down menu. You can see the scholarship offers and tracker visits and all that stuff. And it's a pretty impressive list of all the guys in 2025, not just the big four that we've spent a lot of time talking about, but a lot of guys on that list that are 4- and 5-star recruits that would be great for the program. But for sure, you talk to some media and some IU fans, Braylon Mullins is maybe at the top or very near the top of that list of who they would like to get.
Well, and there are a number of guys that are in this class right from Indiana that you don't have to go very far. Of course, Braylon Mullins is one of those. We talk about him all the time. Trent Sisley, another one of those. He's had a tremendous summer. His summer has just gotten better and better as well. He is averaging double figures for this Indiana elite program, which is undefeated on the 3SSB circuit. And he has played an extraordinary role as the wing, being able to battle inside and out. And his, I'm not going to say his recruitment is not blowing up. I think partly because a lot of people think he is destined, and I am one of those. His recruitment is between Indiana and Purdue, personally, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised if he doesn't stay in state. It's one of those things too. He's just such a steady player that, maybe that's why it's not kind of blown up, because he just got that solid foundation. You know what you're getting with him. But yeah, I saw, a couple of weeks ago when I saw him, he had a slow start and then bam, out of nowhere, he, 3 or 4 threes in a row, baby hooks in the lane, drive and dunk in transition. I mean, another kid that can do it all. And whatever program, gets that guy is going to be blessed for many years as well.
And then, of course, Jalen Harrelson, another guy that's being recruited by everybody. He is his recruiting took off a while back, but of course, when you can play point guard at 6'7", that'll happen. But he is I see him listed as a wing, but doesn't he play point guard?
He splits point guard, which was cool to watch last weekend at Westfield. There's a kid going to Illinois that is also a point guard, so they kind of split the point guard duties, and both of those guys talked about that after Friday's game, just mentioning how it's actually really beneficial for their games to kind of run the show about half the time, and then also learn how to play off ball the rest of the time. So that's an invaluable experience for both of those guys, for Illinois and then for wherever Harrelson ends up going. So he can absolutely handle the ball. He's a leader on the court. He's always telling guys where to go. And then, I saw him drop 30, 35, I think, one night, one morning. He can light it up. He can do a little bit of everything, but that is a pretty cool experience to be able to run the point or play wing at his size.
Yeah, it's amazing. But he's one that also has a ton of offers, people chasing him from all over. But that's not uncommon. That's the norm for players from the state of Indiana. There's always going to be great ones. Even in a so-called down year, which was this particular class, you've got Flory Badunga, Jack Benner, Kanan Catchings. There's Kanan Catchings in next year's class. I can't remember. But there's always somebody, and that's going to be the case. And in Indiana, of course, is not limiting themselves to the guys inside of the state. There's also Malachi Moreno, who plays with the guys on that undefeated Indiana elite squad from outside of Lexington, and it's going to be hard to get him away from Kentucky, I believe, or possibly even Arkansas, where John Calipari is. But I don't see him going far away from home for his mom, but maybe, who knows? I can't. I will not pretend to be able to predict the thoughts of what's going on in the mind of these kids.
Yeah, we've seen a lot over the years too, where it's kind of leaning a certain way, and then there could be a program to kind of swoop in and wow the kids with the offer of some sort. But right now, I agree with you that I think he's going to stay in the Midwest, and 20, 30 some offers that he's already had that we know about. So he's another one. I really enjoyed watching Malik Thomas in Indianapolis as well this last weekend. Anthony, Carmelo's son, Kyan Anthony, has a ton of talent. We saw Darius Adams, just so many guys that play in the circuit of Nike EYBL. That was pretty cool to watch. And again, I mean, I saw at least 50 D1 coaches all in the same building. It was a pretty cool sight.
Yeah, and who are some of the other guys, though, that Indiana is keeping tabs on that people may have heard of, but have not been as familiar with?
Well, two of those guys, that I saw this last weekend are expected to visit this summer, which is Kyan Anthony and Malik Thomas. Malik Thomas actually reminded me quite a bit of Harrelson's game. He can run the point, he can run the wing, does a little bit of everything. He plays for New Heights Lightning. Kyan Anthony's for Team Mello. And then I don't think they're as connected to Darius Adams at the moment, but I know they're still keeping tabs on him, and he plays for I think PSA Cards, I think was their name. But those are some guys that incredibly talented as well. So even though they're not in the around the Indiana elite, the guys that we've been following, there's some absolute intrigue and interest from both sides.
Yeah, and Indiana is going to be, I think, pulling in a mixture next year of new recruits and hitting the portal, as they've shown success there this past off season. So it's going to be interesting. Make sure you stay tuned to what's going on in recruiting and news for Indiana basketball at thehoosier.com, and the guys there will keep you up to date. That's going to wrap it up for that. Tyler, appreciate you very much.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda and the Autograph app, where real fans get unreal rewards. The first to track and reward fans for loving what they love most, turning passion into access and experiences. Download the Autograph app in either the Apple App Store or Google Play today. Autograph, where unhinged fandom meets unreal rewards. Just go to the link.ag.fan/ISB media. Make sure you add that ISB media. And we're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right, Jim, what we'll do here is we'll come back like normal, and then you can introduce who the interview is with, and then I'll just play it from there.
Okay, you're going to play that now. All right. And then third segment.
You'll do what?
What's the third segment?
Zach.
So he's going to be third.
Yep. And then after that is Rob.
Oh, he's at the fourth.
Yeah, everyone gets pushed back a segment just because of the nature.
Is the sixth segment open? Is the last segment
5
open?
and 6 are both open. You can take him long for 2.
I'm going to take Rob. I'll take Rob long, of course.
But yeah, 5 and 6 are both open, which the times for that today are 10:10, and 10:30. We'll end at 10:50.
Did you reach out to Rob?
What do you mean? He responded to the email with the link and just said, got it.
To let him know the time change?
I don't think his time changed. But I can send him something. He's still 9:50. There's nothing different about when the people are coming on.
Perfect.
Yeah. The only thing that's different is how long we have to go with the show because of when we started.
Gotcha. Just the last segment will be open.
The last two. Well, are you gonna break with him?
I mean, I'm not planning on taking him like all the way through 2
Okay,
segments.
I get what you're saying.
Just
I'll play it by ear. We'll figure it out. Yeah, I think we'll have him at 9:50. We'll still have an entire hour to like from that point where we get him is what I'm trying to say. And I will have the video for the Alan Bestwick. I'm just gonna I'll share my screen once we get back in from the segment, and then that'll kind of be your cue to know that I have it ready to roll. Getting a little behind the scenes action today. If you're on the YouTubers, which I guess they kind of get behind the scenes action every day, but sometimes it's a little different.
All right, got that in there. JT Kitna, you remember that kid?
Yeah, we played that yesterday. What about him?
He said his official visit.
Nice.
Got that out last night. First,
all right, here we go. Out. 10 seconds.
Steakhouse, Chop Shop, Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Fast Friday, as they're going to be jacking up the speeds today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and ahead of Sunday's hopeful running of the Indianapolis 500. I'm not very confident that that's going to happen on Sunday. That is. It is. I looked at the hourly forecast yesterday there, and I'm like, whoo, it's like 70% this hour, 80% another hour, 90, there's 100%. It's like, boy, I don't think it's going to happen. Monday, however, I looked, and from noon on, it's all sunshine. So daggone it, you hate when that happens, but that's okay. A little into each life, a little rain must fall. But I was very fortunate to get to speak with Alan Bestwick, a longtime voice of not only NASCAR, but IndyCar. You know his voice when you hear it, and he's just one of those distinctive voices, and he is smooth as butter and a super, super great guy. So look forward to hearing what Alan has to say from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
We're here with Alan Bestwick at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Alan, there's a lot of jobs that you do during this month of May, but this is an incredible month, unlike any other sporting event, besides being the largest one in the world. But this thing has a month long of activities that keeps you and everybody else busy here.
Yeah, I'm a temporary resident of Indianapolis every May now. I think I got here on the 8th, and I'm here till 29th, maybe, which is great. Love the city, love the way the city embraces the event, wraps its arms around it. I mean, I get to be at the racetrack every day, and at this racetrack every day with an all-access pass to have the run of the house. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hear you. I complain to myself a lot, but at the end, I always say, I'm not digging ditches, man. It could be worse. One of the greatest sporting spectacles in the world. And these drivers, the big names that are still in IndyCar, it's amazing that it doesn't matter. Andretti, all of those guys, that's part of what makes this place so magical.
Yeah, I think the magic is the history, the competition, the spectacle, all those words together. That's all part of the recipe that makes this a day like no other. When they asked me to start doing the Indy 500 with ABC back at the time, I thought, well, been doing races here for however many years it was with Brickyard, same booth, same hotel, same TV compound, same place you park your car, same everything. But it's a totally different experience. And it was a totally different experience then in 2014. So it's a really special event, special day. No matter what kind of fan of motorsports or racing you are, this is special. And that's why it's so much fun to be here to witness it.
What are the things that really stand out to you about this race and this event?
First thing is something I said before, the way the community wraps its arm around this event. You can't be in Indianapolis and not know this race is going on, and it's a big deal. From the street signs downtown, the hotel I'm staying in's got the big logos plastered all over the side of it. Every television station, the newspaper, all the radio stations, every internet site you can think of that has something to do with the city of Indianapolis. This race is front and center of it. It's really fascinating to see the way that the community embraces the event and the history. The people that come here. This is a family thing. For people who grow up in Indiana, for people who used to live in Indiana, this is a family generational thing. So to go out and wander around the grounds and hear, my great-grandfather first brought my father here, and now my father brought me, and now we're here with my son, and that's different. That's very special and unique. And then obviously the place, right? I grew up with the Sunday night ABC tape delayed as must watch. To walk in here today and to be part of the living, breathing history of this place is different. I drove in the tunnel here in April for the open test, and I'm sitting in traffic and you're shuffling in the morning to get to where you're going to park your car, and I'm just looking at the stands along the front stretch. And I'm thinking to myself, how odd is this that this guy from the only state in the union that doesn't have a racetrack is coming to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with an all-access pass. And it's brilliant. There's just so many layers to that onion. It's hard to explain them all.
How did you get into calling the races with not coming from that kind of a background?
Yeah, so it's, how much time you got? That's a long story, but
much as you got.
But my dad had a race car at a track in Massachusetts. When I was a little kid, got out when I was probably 8 years old, couldn't afford it anymore. Had to choose between putting food on the table for his 3 kids and putting tires on his race car. Thankfully, he made the right choice. So I've always been a race fan. It's part of what we shared with our family, and one thing, led to another. Broadcasting was all I ever wanted to do in my life. I mean, that's been my thing from the time I was, as far as I can remember. I wanted to be the guy on the radio, the television. It was just me. And then from there, just circumstance led one thing to another, and ended up at MRN in the mid '80s, and that led to television, and that led to all kind of other weird things. So the accidental journey of an intended destination, if that makes sense.
There are certain voices that just resonate with racing, whether we're talking Mike Joy in NASCAR or you on both of those. And you're one of the rare ones that cross over besides some of the pit guys. Most of the NASCAR guys stay in that genre, but you've been able to cross over both of those, and that's got to be a blast because this is 2 completely different monsters.
I think that's more of a product of schedule than anything else, because I feel and believe race fans are race fans. Walk into the drivers and owners motor coach lot at a NASCAR race on a Saturday night, and chances are the television that's playing outside, most of those is on a race somewhere. It might be a sprint car race, from somewhere in Pennsylvania. It might be, an IndyCar race. It might be an IMSA race. It might be anything. Formula One on Sunday morning. They'll all be watching. Whether they're here in Indianapolis, whether they're in NASCAR, Charlotte, they'll be watching Monaco Sunday morning. Race fans are race fans. So I think it's hard to be in two places at once. It makes that specialization happen more than anything else.
I mentioned NASCAR earlier when I was getting on the elevator. Kyle Larson was getting off, and there's been much talked about with him attempting the double. It's been done before, but Kyle Larson is special. He's a different driver. This guy, I said on my radio show, I think he could race anybody in a Flintstones car. He flipped the car up at Kokomo on the dirt the week before qualifications. But he has brought a ton of attention. Not that Indianapolis needs that attention, but there's more attention that he is bringing over from maybe NASCAR fans.
Well, I think he's giving the NASCAR audience a rooting interest in the race, right? You watch the race and you enjoy the race and so on, but he's one of them who's competing here. And Rick Hendrick is one of them that's competing here. So he's given the NASCAR audience a rooting interest in the outcome of this race, which is fun. It's a fantastic thing. Kyle's uniquely suited to do this. He's one of those guys that can and will drive anything and drive it well. He'll figure it out. He'll think it out, but he won't overthink it. And you're talking about a guy that, yes, will be in a sprint car on a half-mile dirt track on a Wednesday night, jump in a cup car, go practice, 20 minutes of practice, qualify, race 500 miles. He's done the Rolex 24 at Daytona. He's here at Indianapolis. I'm not shocked he's doing well. Because it doesn't happen that often, people forget. Well, remember, Kurt Busch finished 60th, qualified 12th. Had his incident at one point during the month, but it was a lesson. Kyle's uniquely suited to do this. His disposition, his adaptability. He doesn't know what he doesn't know, but he's not afraid to absorb that, and he's just got that natural feel for any kind of race car. And it's fun. I think it's great. I would love to see some IndyCar guys get a chance at some NASCAR races in the next gen car. But I remember Joseph Newgarden talking about it. He said, it would take practice. In today's NASCAR, like the Brickyard, okay, that's an off weekend for IndyCar. Love to see. Remember back when the Brickyard first started, 3 or 4 guys, AJ would run. But with 20 minutes of practice right into qualifying, and that's it for the race, you can't do it. You can't properly get a feel for the difference in cars and be competitive. Kyle's had a whole week practice on the oval. Didn't get as many laps as he would have liked to, but he still got a lot more than 20 minutes to figure it out.
NASCAR, and speaking of, they're going back to the oval on the Brickyard when they return here. So there's that. So maybe enticing Joseph Newgarden or somebody else for that, which would be cool. But what does a top finish by Kyle Larson do for NASCAR? Obviously, IndyCar or F1 is so popular around the world, but it means something to those people, I think.
I don't know if it does anything for NASCAR. Kyle's a NASCAR champion. He's won 2 races already this year. If anything, it just shows to some other people in NASCAR that, hey, these guys are good, and maybe opens the door for some more people that might want to take a shot at it, and even more so some of their business partners, be it manufacturers, be it team members, sponsors. If anything, it opens that possibility up. Look, Kyle Larson doesn't need to do this to establish that he's a great race car driver. He's a NASCAR champion. He didn't need to do this. But it really is fun that he's willing to give it a go.
And Team Penske, undoubtedly, with the speed in this race, it doesn't matter if we're talking about Kyle Larson or anybody else. They're all chasing Team Penske with that speed that they've got. But come race day, I know things change, things happen. It comes down to luck sometimes, fuel strategy, tire strategy, all of that. But Penske is looking extraordinarily strong.
Penske had a very good qualifying weekend. But as you probably heard repeatedly from all the drivers, and I've heard repeatedly from all the teams back in the garage, this field is thick. And you're going to need to execute a perfect race to win. It's going to have to be flawless. That includes things that are out of your control, like the timing of caution flags versus your pit sequence. Incidents that happen around you. Remember last year, Alex Blow got taken out on pit road. Scott Dixon a couple years ago dominated this race. Had a little hiccup on pit road speeding. You have to execute a flawless race to win it, and the field is thick, and I don't put the number of potential winners anywhere less than 20.
Wow.
Maybe more for this race on Sunday. It's thick.
So what are you looking for in this race when it comes to
perfection? It's got to be perfect. Everything. The race car, the way you adapt its handling as the day goes on, the driver's execution, his passes, his timing, his pit stops, the driver's execution of the pit stops. That pit road speeding penalty will kill your race if you don't get it just right. The fuel mileage, the way the cautions time out in relation to everything has got to be perfect to win. Somebody's going to get it perfect.
And then the one thing that no one can control is something we're all looking at is the potential weather on Sunday and Monday for that matter.
Yeah. I've been doing this a long time. I don't have enough fingers and toes to tell you how many times I've sat at a racetrack where there's no way we're racing Sunday. There's no way we're racing Sunday. We start on time, we finish the whole distance. I've also been sitting in a racetrack when the radar was totally clear except for a pin-sized tip of green that came right over the racetrack in here. So, hopefully it cooperates. A lot can happen between now and then. And whenever it happens, it'll be a spectacular race.
Alan Bestwick, one of the legendary voices in automotive sports racing. I cannot thank you enough.
My pleasure.
Man, it was awesome getting to talk to him. I have heard him do countless races. What a great voice. Just a great guy, but very, very knowledgeable about the sport. And it doesn't matter, like I said, if you're talking NASCAR, IndyCar, and not everybody can just make that crossover. But, man, I'm looking for an exciting race, no matter when it takes place. And I know Bob from Georgetown popped up earlier that it doesn't look good that he saw a weather forecast down in Louisville that goes all the way up through Indy. Yeah, it's trust me, everybody has been checking the weather forecast for Sunday. What stinks is I don't want to have to get all stuff together and go all the way up there to the track again, only to just turn around and go back home and then have to do it again the next day. So it's too bad they can't just say, hey, okay, we're gonna kind of be like IU baseball or soccer. We're gonna move this up, or we're gonna do whatever. Speaking of IU baseball, we'll talk about them when we come back as well. Well, actually, we can talk about them now a little bit, but man, they're rolling. They win again, but we'll take a break and get back to that on the backside of this in the second hour. Zach Osterman yet to join us, and Rob Cassidy as well from Rivals, talking about some basketball recruiting. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Chop Shop, located down in Bloomington. Chop Shop Market and Table, home of the Indiana basketball and football coaches shows, located just north of Bloomington High School South on South Walnut, your local meat shop, steakhouse, and caterer, no matter where you live. Chop Shop Market and Table offers a great sit-down dining experience, and you can stop in anytime and pick up some great pastries. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
just to keep you straight, this isn't the second hour show. Remember, we're just a segment behind. Like in terms of time, this is still hour number 1.
I knew that.
But it's all
damn it. It's not good, man. Sunday is yeah. Let me pull it back up hourly again. See, that's the thing. I don't want to have to I'm not. I don't think I'll go up Sunday.
I don't think you should. Now, maybe I shouldn't say that for everybody else to hear, but
no, I don't care because you're right. I mean, I agree with you. That's why I said it. During the day Sunday, I'll have to pull up the hourly, but the straight up forecast, thunderstorms likely, severe thunderstorms expected. Chance of rain 70%. Well, that's overall, but there are periods where it's going to be 90 and 100%. But that can change. Like these, I know these guys sound crazy when they say that, but
no, it can. I know.
How many times in life it's supposed to be horrible and all of a sudden, woof.
Weathermen like have the best job in the world in the sense, and maybe they're not the only people who are like this. They get paid to be wrong 75% of the time.
Yeah, it's not a guess. It's more of a science now.
Yeah,
which they've got they've got it narrowed down so much better. But you can't always.
I don't know what it is about Louisville, and I'm sure it's not just Louisville, but our weathermen over exaggerate a lot.
Weather is a big.
Oh, I know it's a big ratings thing, especially for news channels, local news, but. I couldn't tell you the amount of times they acted like something was going to be horrible and it wasn't. But here's the other thing. They also downplay storms end up being way worse than they actually are, I feel like.
All right, where's the freaking hourly? Oh, here we go. Hourly. Friday. Saturday. And Sunday.
Assuming Zach's going to pop on. I haven't heard otherwise, so we'll see.
The good news on Sunday is they're only a 15% chance of rain, but that's at 7 a.m.
Okay.
At 8 a.m., it jumps to 40%. Then it's just 30. Oh, man, are you kidding me?
All right, here we go.
2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Fast Friday here at the at Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Speaking of fast, Zach Osterman joining us from the Indy Star. I bet he could get on a bike still and just burn up the track. How do you think you'd fare today, Zach, in jumping on a little 5 bike?
Not well. Not well. Jumping on might be okay, although even in my thinner days, I broke a seat post or two. But no, riding a real problem.
Plenty going on, of course. This weekend is Indy weekend. Hoping the weather holds out. Indiana baseball is rolling along a little in the Big Ten Conference tournament. They beat Ohio State yesterday. That's their second win after disposing of Purdue before that. So they roll on, and they've got a shot at I saw something yesterday, Zach, that Indiana and Louisville are vying for the last spot in the 64-team field.
Yeah, I think it feels like Indiana might have booked it yesterday, It's, I mean, they certainly came into the weekend just kind of needing wins. And I mean, just kind of that, if you think about it in the way we talk about basketball, it's not terribly dissimilar insofar as just kind of like, just keep winning, let the results take care of themselves. And you're kind of in a place where, if you look at, like you mentioned Louisville, I think Georgia Tech is also in a slightly better, sort of spot from or isn't not a slightly better spot, I think they're in a slightly better spot in the RPI, but in general, they're kind of in the same position as Indiana. Good RPI, some decent wins, could probably have stood to make a little noise in the conference tournament. Well, go look at the ACC tournament results. Louisville lost its first game. Georgia Tech went 0-2. I'm looking at pool play right now. Louisville plays again at 3 today. The point is, just keep winning and let some of these other bubble teams, just like basketball, let some of these other bubble teams kind of make their own problems for themselves, essentially. I realize it's very dark in this room. I'm sorry. I didn't realize how dark it was in here. Anyway, let some of these other bubble teams make problems for themselves, and you solve problems for yourself. I still am curious and forgive the on-air admin a little bit here, but I'm still curious what the committee thinks of the Big Ten on Selection Monday, because I think we talked about this. It's been an unusual year. I'm looking at the league. Indiana's up to 51 in the RPI. For comparison's sake, I think Georgia Tech may actually have. No, Georgia Tech is 48. So, I mean, Indiana is, using them as a kind of a comparison to another bubble team. Indiana's moving right into that same neighborhood, but the difference is Indiana's still playing and Georgia Tech's not. The Big Ten's had a funny old season. I can't remember last time you saw the Big Ten. There are 9 Big Ten teams in the RPI top 100. There are 11 Big Ten teams or 12 Big Ten teams in the RPI top 125. That is a really solid number for a conference that used to consistently have, 2 or 3 teams every year that basically, if you didn't sweep them, it was going to hurt your resume because their RPI was so bad. The flip side is the Big Ten doesn't have anybody in the top 30, and it's only got 3 teams in the top 50. Indiana's just outside at 51. Those numbers have improved. Illinois, I think in particular, has made a bit of a jump. Although, if I'm not mistaken, they are home now. I think they got eliminated, or maybe they moved on to play today in Omaha on the loser side of the bracket. It sort of reminds me of like the Mountain West Conference last year in basketball. This season just passed. They got 6 teams into the tournament, and it was kind of one of those where it sort of felt like the committee was faced with this decision on Selection Sunday, which was, do we buy the Mountain West as a conference and therefore reward all these bubble teams that have been beating each other all year? Or do we not buy the Mountain West as a conference, and that works against all these teams? And there were a whole bunch of Mountain West teams. Nevada, I think Utah State was an 8 or a 9. Nevada was like a 10 or an 11. New Mexico was a 10. Colorado State was a 10. Basically, the committee said, we believe in that conference, and they got 6 bids. I could see a world where the selection committee looks at the Big Ten the same way, and we wind up seeing 4 Big Ten teams get in. I think the 4 that, are kind of comfortably in the frame right now, because Purdue faded a little bit down the stretch. I think Maryland's probably in. Nebraska's probably in. It seems like Illinois is maybe sweating a little bit, but that RPI number is really, really good. And then Indiana, I think, has just been improving itself. They won the Michigan series. I know they missed an opportunity in Nebraska, but the flip side is Nebraska and Maryland, you played those 2 series on the road and you split those 6 games straight down the middle. That's good in the aggregate. I'm just curious if maybe the committee winds up giving the Big Ten a little bit more credit and saying that was a tougher league than it normally is, top to bottom this year. There was more depth. Therefore, we have more reason to believe in the teams that kind of emerged from it with decent resumes. And Indiana, I think, would be kind of in that group.
Yeah, the Big Ten, like a lot of others that are not located along the coast or the Sun Belt states, where you see most of the teams coming from, mainly just because of warm weather. That's just a fact. They can practice more. They don't need indoor facilities. But the Big Ten has been working. Indiana has been a stalwart for a few years. Michigan has been a standout, and they're the farthest north. So, but Indiana hopefully getting, and it's a great rebound by that Indiana baseball team, Zach, because the start of the season wasn't all that great.
Well, they started the season well. I mean,
once they got going,
picked up some real, and frankly, that's a big part of why they're still in the bubble conversation. And listen, the other part of this is they're obviously in the semifinal now. I mean, win the Big Ten tournament and you're in. You get the auto bid. So there's that element of it too, which is they keep winning. They keep giving themselves rest, which means they keep getting to reset their bullpen a little bit, which obviously pitching has been, kind of an issue for this team this season, just primarily because of some injuries and things. But, the more they advance in the weekend, not only are they improving their resume, but there's every chance they're getting closer to just winning the auto bid. And this is all academic. But from an at-large perspective, that start to the season when they beat Coastal Carolina, I think they beat Dallas Baptist, they swept Baylor. That was kind of I know Baylor's not a great team, but you go on the road, Southern School, you sweep them, you're going to get at least some credit for that. That's a big part of what's holding them in the at-large now, because they had that dip mid-season where I think they went 10-18 or 10-17. And again, a lot of that was around injuries, and you can kind of tell that story a little bit to the committee. And, you hope that maybe you get some credit for, hey, once we got healthy, this was the team we became, and this is the team we really are. But those first couple weekends, before kind of the mid-season swoon, might turn out to be really, really important. And then obviously, kind of this April and May surge that they've been on started with another big win. That one was at home, but the Indiana State win, because Indiana State's one of the best teams in the country. They are 10th in the RPI now. They've got 40 wins. That's that's the kind, even at home, that's the kind of non-conference win that, imagine if, again, use basketball as an example. Imagine you were a bubble team that had beaten the Ken Pom number 10 team in the country. Even if it was at home, that doesn't matter. That still helps. So it's not apples to apples, the selection process between basketball and baseball, but it's not two completely different sort of, sets of circumstances either. They've really, again, I think maybe the most compelling argument you make if you're Indiana is, when we were healthy, this is what we were. When we were relatively healthy, no, they're not a perfect team, but, you could see what they were when everybody was everybody that could be healthy, because obviously a couple of these guys had long-term injuries, Luke Centered, et cetera. But, the argument is sort of like when we're healthy, we're a 35-38 win team. Because if Indiana's got its health in that stretch where it goes 8-10, then maybe it can flip 3 or 4 of those games around. And suddenly, obviously we're not talking about Indiana being on the bubble, but suddenly we're also talking about a team that maybe came closer to winning the Big Ten in the regular season, maybe a team that's 36-18 today instead of 32-22. And, that's a more compelling argument. So, my gut says, and others are more well-versed in baseball bracketology, if you want to call it that, than me. My gut says they're okay and that they're in. But they're probably still, when I say they're okay, I mean they're in right now. You still got to make sure that you give yourself enough breathing room for anything unexpected, some other bubble team to make some crazy run, somebody to grab an auto bid from a conference that wasn't expected to, whatever. You want to give yourself a little bit more cushion. The more you keep winning in Omaha, the more you help yourself.
Yeah, and how about the year for the Sycamores over in Terre Haute of Indiana State? A great run in men's basketball. This is not a first time thing for them in baseball, but also staying strong in baseball for a school that's not one of the it's one of the mid majors, but man, they've had a great year in basketball and baseball.
Well, and they've been, I mean, listen, this is what they have been in baseball for quite a while now. You go back to, was it when Rick Heller was there, and Heller, who is now at Iowa. But I mean, I think he spent 5 seasons at Indiana State. You know, he had them playing good baseball then. You know, we tend to talk so much about Indiana's non-conference. You know, are they going to play Kentucky? Are they going to play Louisville? Are they going to go south? You know, playing Indiana State home and away is pretty productive every year, because if you go back and look through again, I mean, they're 10th in the RPI this season. I'd have to dig through, but I mean, they have been a consistent NCAA tournament participant. I think they hosted a regional last year. If memory serves, they hosted Iowa. I think there was some suspicion of jiggery-pokery around keeping Indiana out of Indiana State's regional so that Indiana State didn't have to deal with a massive influx of IU fans. But not that these sorts of things ever happen. But no, I mean, that's Indiana State has become, not just the class of its conference, but one of the best, mid to low major teams. And let's be clear. I mean, like, when we're talking about Northern conferences, including the Big Ten, like, again, using basketball parlance, the Big Ten is a mid-major conference in baseball. It is not one of the Big Five. The ACC, the SEC, what for now is still the Pac-12, the Big 12, and frankly the Sun Belt. Because all those schools have a lot of the same advantages weather-wise, travel-wise, as the SEC, your Coastal Carolinas, your Georgia Southerns, etc. But the Big Ten has managed to move itself. I think Warren Nolan had them basically best of the rest in terms of conference strength this year. And so you're talking about kind of being the best mid-major conference. And then when you talk about some of the smaller conferences in the Midwest, the Missouri Valley, the Horizon, conferences like that, it's not that there aren't good teams coming out of those conferences. We've seen Missouri State be really good in recent years. Obviously, as we discussed, Indiana State has been consistently pretty good across multiple coaches now. Like, that has become a really consistent program. But when you talk about Northern baseball, whoever you're talking about, you are talking about mid and low major, conferences, because of all of the attendant disadvantages around weather, around recruiting, around, what we talk about with Indiana every year, which is, can they do enough in the non-conference to boost their RPI so that they don't have to, go 18-0 in the Big Ten just to have a good enough number to be considered at large. It's a different game, but I think that's what makes, obviously you talked about the Big Ten's, kind of strength in recent years, some of these programs that have become more consistent, Indiana chiefly among them. That's also what makes a year like this one interesting for me, is I can't remember a year that the league has, for the moment, 13 baseball playing schools. Wisconsin doesn't have a baseball team. I cannot remember a time when I looked at college baseball RPI and you saw so many Big Ten teams in the top 50, so many Big Ten teams in the top 100, so many Big Ten teams in the 125, and not a single Big Ten team below 150. Northwestern is last in the Big Ten in RPI at 149 nationally. Normally there are at least a couple sub 200 teams in the league. And when you have teams like that, as everybody, again, going back to that basketball comparison, it just kind of pulls everybody down a little bit, because any game those teams win is hugely damaging to whoever they beat. And it just kind of, all boats lower a little. This year, it feels like all boats have been rising. But the flip side is we don't have that separation of 2 or 3, maybe 4 teams that we clearly say those are obviously NCAA tournament caliber. They deserve a shot. Everybody else is just kind of playing for a chance to make a run at, the auto bid. Maybe we're seeing that late this season. I mean, I'd love to talk to somebody like Kendall Rogers or Aaron Fitt about that. I know they're busy this week. I'm not gonna. I texted Fitt yesterday, but I'm not gonna bother him too much. But maybe we are seeing that a little bit now with the way that Nebraska has obviously separated, with the way Indiana is starting to kind of surge into the business end of May. Maybe we are seeing a little bit of that separation. I'm just fascinated to see what the committee thinks of the Big Ten, because I think you can make an argument for 4 teams out of this league. And I think that when you looked 2-3 weeks ago at where the Big Ten was, it was kind of hard to see a path to that because everybody was good enough to beat each other, but not good enough for 2 or 3 teams to really separate. And now maybe that's happened.
Yeah, looking forward to an exciting rest of the weekend. What's up next for you, man?
Well, obviously baseball and then, the race. We got the race is one of the biggest single things on the Stars annual calendar. It is exactly what you think it is for us. So
yeah, it is gigantic, and big hope, crossing the fingers for the weather, but we'll see. Zach Osterman, I can't thank you enough as always, my friend.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we'll all be watching that weather this weekend and hoping at least there's a window. I mean, it might be the kind of race that they just need to get to 100 and as fast as they can, and we'll just hope from there. But we'll see.
Absolutely, Zach Osterman from the Indy Star. Appreciate you, sir.
Talk to you soon, Jim. Thanks.
Absolutely. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. That includes Rob Cassidy, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals Basketball. Brought to you by Cheryl Sizemore and Remax Realty. For those looking for a home in the Indianapolis market, reach out to Cheryl. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
How's it going, Rob? Can you hear us?
I can hear you. You can't hear me.
Oh, there we go.
Huh?
I got you now.
Okay,
I got you now.
Right.
Good stuff.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, I got
okay.
you.
All right, cool. That's all.
Hello, Robert. How are you, sir? How are you, Rob?
Hello. Check.
There might be some sort of delay, is what I'm afraid of.
It seems like there is, maybe.
Just go back out and come back in.
Yeah, see if that fixes it. Yeah, hop out, hop in.
Hop out, hop in. It sounds like the hokey pokey, man. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Man, I remember that from when I was a kid going roller skating.
Yeah, that was the thing. I remember them.
An old building down in New Albany that turned into PC Lumber that turned into just an old building.
We still have a roller skating rink really close to where I live, actually. It's really close to North Bullitt High School, which I'm sure you're not familiar with where that is.
I know. I bet I know which one you're talking about.
You got me, Rob? Or got us? Oh.
Nope.
Well,
he's
okay.
Gone again.
Well, yeah, it's called Skaterama. That's what it's called.
Brian,
and it
yeah,
does well from what I can tell. I think it's just because it's vintage looking. They haven't really updated the way it looks. It's very old school.
Yes, it was, man. It's so funny. Gosh, damn it. I can remember this as clear as day. We would go, the church would take us on Wednesday nights over there Never can remember what the name.
See if Rob. Hold on, let me check on Rob.
I think we're
All right,
good.
Rob, do we got you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear us?
I definitely can. Awesome. We're fixed.
Perfect.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good. How are you? Things good?
Busy, man. I'm waiting for it to slow down, but
I've been waiting
this
for
weekend.
years.
Yeah, geez, I hear you. And then we've got the Indianapolis 500 this weekend, but the potential for serious rain on Sunday. And I'm like, man, I don't want to go up there and it not happen. I'm like, damn it.
Here we go.
MyStonecrestLiving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Fast Friday as the cars will be on the track at Indianapolis today. Tuned up, and ready to roll in anticipation of hopefully Sunday's Indianapolis 500. But before that, we've got Rob Cassidy, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals and for basketball recruiting. Rob, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You know, one of these days I'm going to get there for the Indy 500. It's on my bucket list. This might not be the year because, A, I don't have the time, and B, I don't want to stand in the rain, but maybe next year.
I'm telling you, there are so many events that go on beforehand that are actually almost as fun, especially the Saturday and the Sunday before, because Saturday is qualifying, and they have what they call the Fast 12, who are the 12 fastest. Those guys move, and then the next day you have the Fast 6, and those top 6 get to go for the pole position. And then there's people trying to make the race still. So Indianapolis has done the best job of making ancillary events into pretty big events and fun things to watch. There's you don't have to deal with hardly any traffic because it's so spread out on those days that that's a great time to go. I'll be honest with you.
Is it affordable for regular people still, or has it gone the way of F1 where it's like, forget about it?
No, man, they pack this place. I mean, absolutely pack it. And there are just, yes is my answer. It's affordable.
Awesome.
I don't know what the ticket prices are exactly, but I know that there are, with the amount of seats they have, which I think it's the largest stadium in the world, which you would call the largest stadium in the world, because for the race last year when I was there, it was 330,000 people, Rob.
Oof. Boy. Yeah, I gotta get to see this in person. There's no doubt about it.
It becomes one of the biggest cities. Speedway, Indiana, which is where the track is actually located, which is kind of a city inside of Indianapolis, the northwest corner. But it's a city of about 12,000 maybe. But on race day, it's about 350,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it becomes big. But speaking of big, has been basketball, the AAU circuit this summer. We've seen quite a few guys, their recruiting blow up. Braylon Mullins, I'll just start with Braylon Mullins. I've been talking about him for weeks and how, man, you could just tell he was getting on a heater and that his recruiting was going to pick up. Indiana, of course, has been on him from the beginning, but now you've got the rest of the big boys jumping in, whether it's UConn talking or North Carolina. Just in the last 2 days, I've seen offers from Ohio State and Creighton for him. So he's had a hell of a summer. Kansas, he's had a hell of a summer on the circuit, man. None bigger than last week in Texas, where he goes 6 of 6 behind the 3-point line and 8 of 10 overall from the field.
Yeah, I saw him about a month ago for the first time this year and was like, oh, he had a great game. And I was like, oh, when college coaches see this guy. And sure enough, they went and they saw him last weekend and the offers poured in. And now, Indiana's got another heavyweight fight on his hands. I'd argue that this is a incredibly important recruit for Mike Woodson in the state, in an area of the state where Indiana traditionally had success. And now he's got to win one of these fights. He's going to have to knock out, North Carolina and Kansas. And I think if you have a chance to do it, this is it, though. You got a kid in your backyard. You got in early. You've recruited this kid a year before anybody else even knew who he was. There's a lot working for Indiana here. And if things straighten out on the floor this season, I think they'll have as good a chance anybody can land it.
Yeah, and he's one of those old school, what I call old school Indiana kids, man. The dude, he's just got a jumper that is smooth as butter. He can get to the rim, though, and he likes to get to the rim. I guess defense is probably the thing he'll have to work on most. And not that he's bad. It's just that's something you always have to work on. But, man, from an offensive standpoint, he's got a great bag of tools.
Yeah, he's a lot more athletic than I think people give him credit for, because everybody likes to talk about the three-point shot and like you mentioned, the jumper, which is incredible. But he can, he's got some wiggle to him. He gets by guys. He gets paint touches. He gets in there. He finishes at the basket over bigger defenders. He does a lot in the offensive end. And I think the defense will come as he adds some weight, just the natural progression of things. Right now he gets pushed around a little bit. But, he's young.
Yeah, and the Indiana Elite team that he plays on is also has a few guys that many people have heard of. Of course, Trent Sisley right there next, another Indiana kid from down in southern Indiana at Heritage Hills High School. Trent, his summer has gone extraordinarily well. It seems like it's gotten better as Indiana Elite has their 3SSB season has progressed.
Yeah, they, that whole team in general, is Malachi Moreno on that team too? I think he is.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
He's been impressive, and he's one that I think Indiana's got a good shot at too. Between that big three, Mike Woodson is going to see himself courtside a lot. I think in July to watch that Indiana Elite team, because those are all three gettable, high-profile targets. I think, and they're the kind of targets that if he wants to kind of quiet down some of the groans from that fan base, that he needs to get at least one of them. I think.
Absolutely, and when I talked to them at an event a while back, a few weeks back, they all talked about they're trying to take an official visit to Indiana together.
Yeah, if you imagine if we got all three of them, and that works in their favor, I think, because you can really, if you can get one of them sold on the State Pride Act, narrative, and building the program back up around local-ish kids. I know Moreno is technically from Kentucky, but if you can start that narrative, and we were in on you early, yada yada. Of course, the money has to be there. If it is, I think you give yourself a chance. The season has to start well too, because if this season goes poorly, as well as I do, the groans are going to get louder, the seat is going to get warmer, and then it's harder to land high-profile recruits with options. So I think they've got to come strong out of the gate, and if they do that, I think that they can get one or two of those guys, and then you're talking about a good cycle, I think.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, Trent Sisley, he's so universal. He can play a multitude of different positions, whether it's kind of the three, mainly, or the four. He can go inside. He's played a lot inside this summer, but also step out and calmly knock down the long ball. So he is also a very valuable weapon. And we talked about all three of these guys, all three different players perfectly placed in those positions. And then they've got a kid named Mark Zachary that plays point guard for them, who is most people think is going to be an NFL cornerback. But man, I'm surprised that he's not picking up offers for college basketball along the way, or I would not be surprised to see him play both sports at some school.
Yeah, there are very few schools that seem open to letting that happen. Football and basketball, I don't know what Indiana's football program is like. I know Florida State is traditionally under Leonard Hamilton, let guys do that, but it's difficult. And also, to your thing, like when you mentioned you don't know why he's not picking up a ton of basketball offers. Some of these basketball coaches, you get a reputation for being a football recruit, shy away because they don't want to waste resources and they don't want to chase you and then have you go play football at Georgia or wherever you go. So that is something that happens. I've seen it happen for years. Kids that could play Division I basketball will get under-recruited because they get a reputation for being a football guy, and then that's that.
Another big name that I haven't talked about yet that's straight from the state of Indiana is Jalen Harrelson. Also one that his recruitment has gone national, and that was prior already. He already had the big guys looking at him, but he's such a unique player, a guy that's 6'7" and can play point guard. That's rather unusual.
Yeah, there's that's a reason we have him in the top 10. I think that he is if he can really stay at point, and even if he can play the two, he's an NBA, that's like the kind of thing that the modern NBA drools over, length of that position. He handles the ball incredibly well. I think kind of the floor vision and the passing and kind of the facilitation is going to be what determines if he can stay at the one going forward. But if he does, then all of a sudden you're talking about a top 5 kid, I think. It's going to be interesting to see this next year what kind of becomes of him as he adds weight and adds size. I haven't had a chance to talk to him lately, so I know Indiana's involved. I know that he's been relatively high on them, but I have not had a chance to kind of ask him where things stand in the last 6 months or so. So I'll be interested to catch up with him this summer and pitch him.
Well, I'll have to go back in a second and look at that. We the Hoosier.com spoke with him last week and talked to him about all of that, so I'll pull that up. But there are other guys that are also on Indiana's radar, and a little crossover between one of them with Mikel Brown, who played against Indiana Elite, I think last week, and Trent Sisley drew the defensive assignment, and Mikel Brown's an outstanding player, and he held him to 4 of 22 from the field.
Yeah, here's the thing with Mikel. I think he, if all things are equal, I think he's going to end up being a 2024 kid. Talking to his dad recently, they want to reclassify up if the college that he picks allows that. I think Alabama has talked to him about that. I don't know where Indiana is on that, but I think the goal for him is to play the summer and then reclass in the 2024 class and then be on campus somewhere. At least according to his dad, that was the plan. I think they were trying to get some academic stuff straightened out. So it's a possibility that if Indiana has a roster spot for him, that they could recruit him that way. And if they don't, they're probably not so involved, provided that he gets the academic stuff straightened out, doesn't stay in 2025.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. Indiana this year, they have not been – when Mike Whitson came in, they didn't hit the state very much because they were just kind of behind. You already had guys that were involved. And so this will be the first class of really going after Indiana players in addition to adding from the portal. They had a great trip, I guess you'd say, through Portalville this offseason. They have filled a ton of spots that that were glaring weaknesses from when you watched last year. They did not have depth at all, and they were very, very weak at the guard spot. You had the injury to Xavier Johnson, but even with that or without that, they were still very thin at the guard, thin at shooting. And so they have added the pieces to fill those in. Luke Goody for the shooting. You've got Ja'Kai Newton, who we have not seen play yet. And we kind of forget about a little bit, but he's behind the curtains as well.
Yeah, that portal class is intriguing to me on a number of levels. I think that Stanford point guard Caden Carlisle is an outstanding player. Obviously, Miles Rice from Washington State. That backcourt there is intriguing because for a number of reasons. Both are talented players, but also they seem to kind of fill in each other's gaps. Rice is a long, kind of rangy guy that can defend multiple positions. He's proven the ability to score at an incredible clip at Washington State in the Pac-12 last year. And I think Carlisle's knack, he can obviously score the ball, but he's a facilitator. He's kind of a true point guard, a guy, hard-nosed. And I think they kind of play well off each other. It's going to be interesting. I'm really interested to see what it's like if they're both on the court together at the same time there at Indiana. And I think that'll obviously kind of bolster that backcourt.
Yeah, and some of the other guys, Nate Ament is one of them that on Indiana's radar as well.
Yeah, he's a Maryland guy. He's a guy that's really helped his stock this offseason too in the spring. He'll probably be moving in closer to the top 5. Just the length. He's not a polished product yet, I don't think. It's more potential than production with him. There are times where he'll go off for 30 and he can shoot it. But I think there's room for growth there. He handles it pretty well. He's gotten better at handling it. So he's kind of playing that wing spot. It's an ideal for, with the length and the way that he handles the ball. If it all comes together offensively for him, he can defend 5 positions. And he's the kind of guy that NBA GMs are already buzzing about because of the long-term potential. not so much the production.
And then who are some of the other guys that Indiana you think has a great shot with?
I've heard, I was just talking to Chris Senak's coach this morning, actually. He said that they've been talking to Mike Woodson and that they were expecting an offer in the next couple of days from him. So we'll see if they offer him. He's a power forward out of New Orleans, about 220 pounds, can shoot it a little bit, kind of a bully under the glass. So he's where do we have him ranked? In the top 40, I think. I think somewhere 35, 36. So I'd expect to see Indiana get involved with him. He's in 2026. So yeah, I would look for news on that, unless the coach is lying to me in the next few days. Or no, he's in 2025. Excuse me.
And then what the rest of the summer now? What are you expecting on the scene up until we get to the 3 SSB finals in July in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and the EYBL championship, the Peach Game?
Yes, I'm home this weekend for once, thank God. And then, I mean, it's been a grind, I tell you what. And then off to Penn All-American Camp, where a lot of those Indiana targets will be there in Las Vegas. Almost all the guys that we just talked about will all be out there. And then I was going to try to do USA basketball for a couple of days, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that in Colorado Springs. And then you're into NBA Top 100 Camp, and then Peach Jam, and then the 3 SSB Championships in July. So, hopefully I'll savor this week off at home and then be back out on the road and see about those Indiana commits or Indiana prospects, I guess, targets in Vegas. I know Mikael Brown is going to be there. I think that Edwards or Braylon's going to be there. I know that Malachi Moreno is going to be there. So it'll be nice to get another look at those guys.
Yeah, speaking of Jalen Harrelson earlier, I mentioned that the Hoosier.com spoke to him last weekend, and he said that he had originally said the end of summer in regards to a decision, but I'm really looking at early fall. I want to take my visits, which I can't do right now, but I want to take my visits with some being in early fall and go through the process before I make my decision. And as far as Indiana being involved with him, yes, Mike Woodson was my first offer, and that has always meant a lot to me. They've kept in close contact with me, and obviously had the visit not too long ago. It's been good. So that's from Jalen Harrelson in regards to his decision.
I'd expect Indiana to be on that final list when he cuts it, even if he cuts it down to 4 or whatever. The thing that we need to talk about on a macro level that you kind of pointed out there is these kids, we have them doing too much. There's an event every weekend. He's like, I can't take visits now. Yeah, because there's a camp or an AAU tournament every single weekend until the fall. It's getting to the point where I'm a little bit kind of worried about, what the toll that this takes on American high school players' bodies. It seems like there's more events every year that these elite kids are expected to attend. And then the weekends they're off, they have to scramble to take campus visits because they have no other time to do it. And it just seems, it seems like it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And maybe that's coming from a place where I'm sick of being on the road every weekend too. So I understand.
I was getting ready to tell you, brother. I'm like, well, I don't know about them, but I can damn sure tell you, I would sure like to take a break.
Yeah, I forgot my wife's middle name. I'm home so little, But it's even worse for them. I'm going, I'm not having to work out and play 4 games a day, every weekend on the road, and then come back and. They just, I know they're kids and they don't fatigue like adults do, but man, it is a lot. There are no weekends off anymore. And there's not even a lull between the high school season and the grassroots season. So when Harrelson says he can't take visits, yeah, it's because he's playing basketball all the time.
Yeah, it's hard to get those scheduled in there with all the travel and all of that. And speaking of what Harrelson said, I've spoken with Braylon Mullins and Malachi Moreno and Trent Sisley as well. And they all said that they're looking at before their seasons making decisions. I don't know if they all stick with that, especially someone like Braylon Mullins, who is going to continue to just stack up offers. But these decisions may all come before Indiana's or anyone else's season starts.
Yeah, I think as far as Mullins goes, the sooner the better for Indiana, right? Like you want him to make that decision like now before he starts getting around to Kansas and the North Carolinas of the world. So if he's able to do that, I think it bodes well for Indiana, who has been there before anyone. Like that, you want to talk about a good job of identifying talent. Like, say what you want. But they were there, and they made him a priority early before anybody else really saw him, and before he's become what it's become. And I think that's still worth something, even in today's name, image, and likeness landscape. If all things are equal, I think that's a really, really important thing.
Well, Rob, we thank you a bunch, man, and appreciate you, and hope you can go get some rest.
Gonna do my best. Thank you. Anytime, guys. I love coming on. So maybe we'll see you next year at the 500.
There you go, or probably at the 3SSB coming up. Rob Cassidy from Rivals, the National Recruiting Director. We've got lots more coming up. Brought to you by Boost Fundraising. Know anyone that needs a fundraiser? Well, Boost Fundraising is the place to be, raising more money faster. It offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member, free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all. Sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, and community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com. Be sure to enter the promo code COIL to receive a discounted fundraiser. We're back to finish it out on this Fast Friday right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly BB.
Just a reminder, so we do have one more break to hit, and we end at 10:50. So we've got about 30-ish minutes left.
Man, his sound was effed up.
It sounded like there was a robot in his phone, like pushing buttons and stuff. I can't even mimic what it was, but it was weird to say the least. I mean, thankfully, it could have been worse because a lot of people. I mean, I didn't notice a lot of comments on the hotline, even though I'm sure many people were thinking that it was loud or annoying. But I guess it could have been worse. It could have been, I guess nondescript. What'd you say? Currently trying to get some new batteries in my mouse. It's been acting weird, like it's going to die on me. Oops. I think we're good. What's going on? Did I put it in backwards? I did put it in backwards. There we go. Much better. I'm going to go throw these away. I'll be right back.
Oh, mama.
What'd you say?
What was Jim's roller disco name? Boy, that'd be a good question.
Someone very early on the show was trying to get you back into the conversation you ended the show with yesterday.
Well, I know, Steven. We haven't had a
Yeah, no, that's why I brought it up now, because I figured this would be where you'd want to bring it up.
I don't know if he's still on or not.
Okay. All right, here we go.
CRV
I'll pop in about when it's time for another break.
days, or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Fast Friday, baby. I got to pull the flag down and wave it. Indianapolis 500 set to take off on Sunday right now, but the weather does not look all that great, although there's always hope. But what sucks, like I said, is I don't want to have to drive back to the track, sit around, go through 4 hours of rain delay, and then go back home and come back on Monday. A JB Justin, I like that. That's funny. But we'll see. The bigger question is Kyle Larson. He's the one that is will end up in a quandary because he's under a time crunch. Indianapolis is tip time. Just kidding. For Indianapolis, for the flag to drop is around noon. And the race takes about 3 hours under normal circumstances. If you happen to win, you've got another 2 hours of duties that you're supposed to do. I'm sure that would probably be cut a little short if Kyle Larson were to pull off the unthinkable and win the race. But even if he were to not and just finish the race, there's still going to be some duties, I think, afterwards. But he's going to have to go jump on a chopper there at the IMS Speedway, be taken right over to the airport, jump on a jet, and then zip down to Charlotte, North Carolina. So let's say he gets out of there at 3:45 or 4. Man, that's cutting it close. That's arriving to the Speedway in Charlotte at 5:30ish. Standby drivers in both places in place. But he's got, if there's a weather delay, there's going to have to come a time, and he talked about it yesterday, where he has to make a decision between races. And he says, I don't want it to come to that. I would be hard-pressed to think he would skip the NASCAR race in Charlotte because of he's in a points race in that. This is a one-off. So while I know how badly he wants to run in this and how much effort has gone into this and how much effort has gone into the testing and the qualifying and the car and all of that, it's unbelievable. And it can all just be simply washed away with rain. Now, if it does rain out the race, the good news is it'll be a Sunday, Monday double, which that's never been done before, but it's not quite the same double that we're used to. People will all have to wait till next year if that could be, if that ends up being the case. But it would certainly take the time strain off of being able of having to make both places. But it's just going to be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to the race, of course. Team Penske, strong. You heard earlier, Alan Bestwick say a great week of qualifying, which is always good, but it doesn't always mean diddly squat. I mean, there is so much that goes into winning the Indianapolis 500, like a lot of races, but Indy is, you have to have everything go right. Again, Alan Bestwick said it best, perfection. Your pit stops, they have to be flawless. Your gas consumption and strategy has got to be on. Tire wear, you've got to manage the tires. There's so much you have to do and have it all go right to put yourself in a position to be able to go for the win last year, or go for the win, period. Last year, Joseph Newgarden had that go right for him. So we'll see what happens this year. Kyle Larson in the top 5 in qualifying. So he's in that echelon where guys can win from. But again, Alan said, there's probably upwards of 20 people that can win that race. And there is truth to that with how it shakes out. How the race goes, man. It's the racing gods and how those things change. So we'll be looking forward to that. But Fast Friday today, Carb Day, in essence, they're going to tune them up, turn them up, and get some speed in. And it's looks pretty nice out there. It's cool, so the track temperatures will be cool. So you're probably going to see some speeds, man, there today. Or you could. They don't need to, but they don't want to put themselves in any danger. But that would be my deal. Is, dude, we've come this far. We've gone through qualifications. We've got the car where we want it, and now you got to take it out on the track again. And you just wonder, is someone going to be involved in a wreck and damage a car and have to go to a backup, which generally sends you to the back of the line regarding qualifications and all that. Brian says for Larson, it's better if it rains out early Sunday. Of course, he can leave, run the 600, and be back for month. Yeah, of course, that makes life easier. But here's the bad thing. I don't know that. I wonder how long they would go before officially calling the race. And I feel so bad. What I feel bad for are all the people that come from way out of town. And they have sold, last thing I heard was less than 5,000 tickets, general admission tickets remained. That's a lot. That's a lot of people. What in the hell is going to happen with the weather forecast? How many of those people that have already purchased tickets are going to show up? Of the people that do show up, gee whiz, it's just a quagmire. And on a holiday weekend, I keep forgetting that it's a holiday weekend, but no holidays for me, I guess, if they end up running on Monday. But we shall certainly see. By the way, speaking of which, the boss, John, the producer, cracking the whip, no show on Monday.
Yeah, because it's such a travesty to take off on a holiday.
I know, but you know me, bro. Yeah, we will. The show will be off. I hope I am with it, but I think it's very, very likely that I will be up in Indianapolis on Monday. So we shall see. What, man? And then you got to imagine that thinking about having to fill all that TV time, because you're expecting the race to run. I know they have contingency plans, but they don't have Dale Jr. this year. I didn't even know that. That was part of the damn reason I went up to Media Day yesterday. Funny story is I get there and hit the button for the elevator to go upstairs, and door opens. There's Kyle Larson. I'm like, oh, hey, Kyle, how you doing? We shake hands, and I'm like, good luck. And off Kyle Larson went. And then during the interview with Alan Bestwick, if you, for those listening on radio, you wouldn't have seen it, obviously, but if you're following on YouTube, if you watch that closely, you will notice Joseph Newgarden several times. He walks by, he's in the background. This was right beside the media center there, where all the drivers were speaking yesterday. But Joseph Newgarden is very, very approachable. Most of these drivers are very approachable. It's a unique deal. And like I've said before, I've got to give just immense shout outs to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the communications people, Dave First, the vice president of communications for IndyCar, an old friend. We interned together at WOKY at CBS in Louisville, which is wild, which I was just down there the other day because of Fred Calgill, the longtime sports director there, is retiring. So that was cool, getting to see a bunch of people from the old time. But Dave wasn't able to make it because he was busy at Indy. But the access that we're granted for the Indianapolis 500 is just unprecedented. We're allowed to be on the track right up until it's about time to begin the procession. I remember standing down there last year and talking to Tyrese Halliburton, whose injury is something that all Pacer fans are looking at. Haven't spoken much about the Pacers today. We've been so busy. Daggone it. People were hoping for the Pacers to bounce back and hopefully get a win last night to even that series, but that game was never really close. Boston had lost in the previous two series with playoff series with Indiana. Boston had lost game 2 in both. And the Pacers have not beat the Pacers, though, in playoffs since 2005. That has not changed yet. So now they come back to the friendly confines of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. But are the Pacers the new New York Knicks with some lingering injuries hanging around Tyrese Halliburton and crew? So we've got to take a quick break. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the good folks at Fresh Fork. Man, Fresh Fork is the place where you can enjoy delicious, healthy meals at home without the hassle. Their chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep, proudly fueling IU athletes, and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. A Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Order online and let the Fresh Fork transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use promo code radio20, get $20 off your first order. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the backside.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
That'd be cool to say if you were on the backside of Churchill Downs. Did you disconnect?
What the hell?
Yep.
Hold on, John, for whatever reason.
Oh, you're fine. Well, I guess you can't hear me, but.
What the hell? Well, that ain't good. All right.
Check one. You got me? No?
What the hell? All right. One. John, talk to me.
Check 1, 2. You got me?
What the hell?
Can you hear me? No? I'm assuming. I'm not sure what to do. I mean, I guess can you not hear me at all? What if I do
Your
this?
one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, final segment here before we get you going for Memorial Day weekend, Indianapolis 500 weekend for those of you here in Indiana. Good week of shows. I'm going to check. So Jim was having some headphone issues. We're going to check in with him real quick and see if he's got them figured out. If not, we'll just keep on rolling. But Jim, do you hear me at all? Or is this, am I just looking at it doesn't appear that he can hear me. So I'll keep an eye on this in the background. He'll pop in eventually, I'm sure, once he figures out what's going on. But welcome back in. Final segment here. I tell you what, I feel like I'm not trying to play pity or anything right now, but I've been thrown to the wolves a few times this week. But sometimes it's out of my own control, out of everybody's own control. So it's just the way things roll here sometimes. And I'm going to go ahead and do one thing real quick. Check out this week's episode of the Out of Touch podcast, too. I know Mitchell and I talked earlier this week, and whenever he was on the show with Jim at the golf course, and we get into a whole bunch of fun nonsense. So if you like hearing my voice every now and again, something different, something other than a lot of sports, check that out on Spotify, or you could also find my YouTube page, Out of Touch Media, and you can check out all of that stuff. So we talked a lot of things we talked a lot of recruiting today, talked a lot of Indianapolis 500, didn't get a whole lot into the Pacers. But yeah, it's honestly kind of a crying shame for Indiana, for Indianapolis, and the fact that you really had a chance to steal game one. And it feels like the Pacers have been in this situation a few times with the playoffs, especially when you look back at what happened with the Knicks. And I know that obviously that ended up working out for them, but you couldn't have come closer than you did with game one with the Celtics. And if it weren't for that, almost a game-winning shot from Jaylen Brown, but it was a game-tying shot with Jaylen Brown that sent it to overtime. If it weren't for that, the Pacers are sitting at 1-1 heading back at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and you're looking at a whole different situation. Now you're looking at a situation where you have to win these next two home games and find a way to win either game 5 and then win. If you win game 5, you don't necessarily have to win game 6, but you're going to have to steal one of these last two road games if you're the Pacers. So I'm going to bring Jim back in. He just looked like he popped back in. Oh, never mind. As I was about to do that, he removed himself. So just flying by the seat of my pants, and we're having a good time doing it. So what else is going on this week, guys? We talked a lot about Indiana basketball. Obviously, talked a lot about the 2025 recruiting class. And one thing that we got into earlier this week is that scholarship count. And one thing we actually do know that we haven't talked about yet this week, we did mention, I think it was last week, that Creighton has removed themselves from the Battle for Atlantis to play in the NIL era players tournament. And the Battle for Atlantis now knows who will fill that spot that Creighton left open. And I'm going to pull up I know who it is, but I want to pull up the entire lineup just so we can talk a little bit about that. But replacing Creighton in the 2024 Battle for Atlantis now will be Providence. So another team from the Big East. I believe they have a first-year head coach. I think his name is Kim English. So they'll be, and they're also right now, I looked at a way too early top 25. I think it was by Fox Sports, and they had Providence as the number 25th ranked team in the top 25. So when you look at this field in the Battle for Atlantis that Indiana will participate in,
this November, December. Here's the lineup. I know we've gone over it before, but I'm going to try to reference some of the top 25, way too early top 25 teams that are in this field. So you have Arizona. I believe they are the highest ranked team in that way too early top 25. I think they were number 10, number 9, somewhere around there. I mentioned Providence. They're the number 25 team in Fox Sports' way too early top 25. And this was updated as recently as a few days ago, I believe, as well. So you also have Davidson out of the Atlantic 10. That is a team that, one thing, if you watch the Battle for Atlantis every year, there's always one team from a mid-major conference. It's kind of similar to how the Maui Invitational every other year has Chaminade in. The only difference is Chaminade's a D2 team, and they are technically the host when you go down to the Maui Invitational. But Davidson, the mid-major representative in the Battle for Atlantis. You also have Gonzaga, who I believe is in the top 10 or 15 of the way too early top 25. Obviously, Indiana, who's currently ranked number 15 in the way too early top 25. I think that's a very reasonable spot to put Indiana when you talk about these way too early top 25 projections, because you kind of, you know what you have coming in, you know what's coming back, but we don't know how the pieces are going to fit together. We assume Kanan Carlisle and Miles Rice are going to be starters and impact players from day one. And if those guys end up being what they're billed as, then that's a good sign for Indiana. And then Luke Goody as well, Langdon Hatton, guy off the bench. So for a lot of these rosters, and this is why the way too early top 25 is so, kind of ridiculous, even though it's always fun to speculate, kind of predict what's going to happen. That's why these things are fun to talk about. So Indiana, number 15, and obviously they're in the field of this Battle for Atlantis. The University of Louisville coming in with first-year head coach, and I shouldn't say first year. He's been a head coach for a while. He had a lot of success at College of Charleston, but Louisville's new head coach, Pat Kelsey, bringing the Louisville Cardinals to the Bahamas in the Battle for Atlantis. I'll be excited to see if Indiana gets paired up with Louisville or finds a way to face the Cardinals at some point down in the Bahamas, because Pat Kelsey has built Louisville's roster from the ground up, and he's got in a lot of interesting pieces. He brought in Chucky Hepburn from Wisconsin, brought in some guys from Charleston, JMU, brought in a guy from Colorado by the name of Javon Hadley, a few others that I'm not bringing to mind at the moment, but it'll be interesting to see. Oh, they also landed a top 40, top 50 freshman in Kahani Ruths. So Louisville's going to have a whole brand new team next year. If you remember when Indiana faced Louisville back in New York in Madison Square Garden last year, it was a game that was a lot closer than it should have been for Indiana. But that was a Louisville team that is, if Indiana faces Louisville again this year, you're not going to see the same caliber of team. You're going to find a much more competitive roster, I believe. So the last two teams, Oklahoma and West Virginia, round out the 2024 Battle for Atlantis. And I don't know much about Oklahoma, to be quite honest. I know West Virginia also is going to have a brand new coach. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. So the Big 12 will have two teams in this tournament. Arizona, now that they're a part of the Big 12 instead of the Pac-12, you'll have them as well as West Virginia. So one thing I will assume when they put this bracket out, I'm sure they'll have Arizona and West Virginia on opposite sides of the bracket, because you really don't want to have inter-conference matchups in what's supposed to be a tournament that features all teams from different conferences. And the reason that I'm sure that it worked out like this is because this field was put together quite a bit of time before they knew the Pac-12 was not going to exist anymore, because obviously Arizona before last season or before this season was a part of the Pac-12. So looking forward to that, the 2024 Battle for Atlantis. And it's going to be an opportunity for Indiana to kind of string together some wins if they're able to this is one of those tournaments where you can build your net ranking. And again, now that I see in the green room, looks like Jim is back. We're going to give him another shot to come on in and see if everything's back to normal. Jim, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you. Just we're using the ulterior modes of transportation to get
That's
on
the way
show.
it goes sometimes. One thing I was just doing, and I was kind of wrapping up this conversation, but we talked last week about how Creighton was leaving the battle for Atlantis to play in the NIL era players tournament. Well, they have that replacement team for the battle for Atlantis now, and it'll be Providence. I'm not sure that you've seen that yet, but so another Big East team that'll be joining that field.
Well, good. But it's going to be interesting to see with these tournaments how many more now go this route of paying these teams. Which I don't know the arrangement of like say Battle for Atlantis. I don't know what the arrangements are, but I do know that Creighton had to pay to get out of that particular tournament. But more importantly, what will it mean for players going forward? Because those players playing in the Players Era tournament are being paid handsomely, and so I'm sure that the other guys are going, "Hey, what about me? What about a little something, for the effort?" In the immortal words of from Caddyshack. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that moves forward with the payments and all that. And we've got the NCAA settlement that, while it looks like it's close to being settled, in talking to people like Michael Mangarelli, he says, don't think this thing is that close to being settled already, because it's not. There's a lot of other things. So we'll probably be talking to him about that and about what all that will entail. I feel bad for the guys that played athletics prior to 2016. They're not getting diddly-do. And I guess basically it's because the statute of limitations have run out. 2016 is when this suit was filed, I guess. So that's what kept them going. But the rest of the guys and girls, ladies, men, women, are SOL. Which stinks. I saw our old buddy Jeffrey the Greek post something that he's anxious. He posted a tip that this is me anxiously waiting for my $5.25 from being a walk-on special teams back in the early aughts. So yeah, those guys, they get nada. John Boy. Man, I'm looking for. Oh, did you see Ricky Stenhouse? Did you see the fight last week?
I did see this. I did see the Ricky Stenhouse fight. It looked like something that was staged out of the WWE, if you ask me.
Well, let me tell you, yes, maybe, but I can promise you, Kyle Busch's jaw didn't feel like it was staged out of the WWE, because Ricky Stenhouse, who's smaller than him but looks a little stockier, let's say, they were going at it, and all of a sudden, Stenhouse unloads a right hook that connects. And but from all communication, it seems as though the beef has been put to bed, but it's going to be interesting to see how those two drive each other going forward, even though you had the team owner, Kyle Busch's team owners, chime in and say that he basically if he wrecked his car, he'd be whipping his butt because it's his car. So we'll see. So a lot of interesting storylines going on in the auto racing this weekend. It's not just the Indy 500. You've got the Coke 600 and the attempt of the double, with hoping that rain stays away from the IMS Speedway or IMS long enough for that to happen. But we'll see. The Pacers are trying. They come back home to Gamebridge to see if they can get things back on track. What's the story with Tyrese Halliburton? What's his health going to be going forward? it'll be interesting to see there. What are your plans for the weekend, John Boy?
I'll be going down to Somerset, Kentucky. My wife and I, and this is not super exciting when all things considered, but we'll be visiting my goddaughter, or my wife and I's goddaughter, down in Somerset. So good little weekend in central Kentucky.
Well, where is this in central Kentucky?
It's Somerset, and I believe that's where one of our listeners, Ross, is
That's
from.
not
that
central,
area.
brother. That's southern.
South Central. It's the middle of the state. Let me pull up a map, though. You may be more right than I realize. I'm not talking like Lexington or anything, obviously, but Somerset is, as I pull up a map here, I'll take a look here. How close is it actually to the South Point? It's, man. Yeah, it's, I'll give it to you. It's pretty southern, but it's still in the middle of the state, though. So South Central.
Yeah, it's pretty far down there. Remember having a rodeo that was in a place called Isom, Kentucky, and it doesn't appear on a lot of maps. But the only map that the guys need to find this weekend is on an oval at Speedway, Indiana. It's 2.5 miles long. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway 108th running. Hopefully that happens on Sunday. A lot of storylines looking into that, so we'll be excited, and we'll bring you all the coverage as well from that and everything else, and we'll get you caught back up when we come back on Monday. Big thanks to Tyler Smith from thehoosier.com. Make sure you go there to keep up to date on what's going on with Indiana recruiting. I think I mentioned that JT Kitna has set his official visit date, quarterback for Indiana football. That'll be June 18th through the 20th. That story also up on thehoosier.com. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, thanks to you, my friend. Rob Cassidy from Rivals, the National Director of Basketball Recruiting. And Alan Bestwick, the voice of NASCAR and IndyCar, for taking some time with us to bring that to you guys as well. Big thanks to each and every one of you all. Without you, we have no reason to be here, and we're looking forward to seeing you again on Tuesday. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.